I've never been a beer drinker. I hate beer. But I said, give me the non-alcoholic beer. And it changed my life because I had something that looked like alcohol, looked like a drink in my hand. So my social anxiety, people thinking, oh, is this guy weird? Well, how come he's, all that went away.
Yeah.
I just stopped. But the problem is when you stop drinking, you lose friends. Once I stopped, it's like, damn, who are my true friends?
Everybody, welcome back to Between Shots. As always, I'm your host, Mike Luevano, and today I've got a great one for you. My guest is a multiple-time Emmy Award winner, motivational speaker, and a long-time NBA play-by-play announcer. With more than 25 years in broadcasting, his career has taken him across the country, and today we're fortunate to have him here with us. But today's conversation goes far beyond basketball. We talk about life, family, mental health, personal growth, and everything in between. I'm grateful for this conversation, and I'm excited to have you here today with us. My guest, Kyle Draper. Welcome to the show, Kyle. How you doing?
Mike, what's up, my guy? Happy to be here, man. Excited to chat with you.
Me too. I was having a conversation with a friend, telling him about our day the other day. So for all those people out there that don't know how this works, we play a round of golf together, and then we come back a few days later and we do this. And since then, we've played 2 rounds of golf together, and we finally made it without rain. But I was telling a story, Kyle, of how the first time you and I met was at a charity golf tournament for an organization we both still currently help raise funds for and bring some awareness to. And it poured rain on us to the point where torrential downpour, canceled the tournament, still raised a good amount of money. That was back in October 25, and that's the first time we met. We played in the same foursome. Fast forward to a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, last week maybe, and we play in a charity tournament here again in Sacramento together. Pouring rain, and like both of them, the very next day was almost 90 degrees, and we're out here in Sacramento, California. It don't matter which month it is, but fun time. So Kyle and I have decided we're not playing tournaments together anymore.
Right.
We're gonna do everything else.
Hey, man, that's the story of my life right there, man. It's a microcosm. It's pouring out here in my life right now, man. It's dumping rain all on me right now.
But if we're gonna stick to that theme, the sun always comes out, right?
Yes, yes,
All
yes.
right. Well, hey, man, I'm happy to have you. And, let's just jump right into this. I said, you know, you spent so much of your career, I would say, telling other people's stories, right? How difficult is it to tell your own story and share that with others?
Great question, Mike. Actually, it's not difficult at all now. I would say the first 30, 40, 45 years of my life, I kept everything private, I'm at a stage in my life now where all I want to do is share my story. All I want to do is talk about the trials, the tribulations, the successes, the failures. And so I think, covering the NBA, covering sports, interviewing people, for most of my adult life, it sort of, gave me an escape from having to talk about my own life. But now I'm ready, Mike. I'm an open book, big fella. I'm ready to get the story out there.
No, I'm excited about that. And we've shared the car ride the other day and some golf and some other stuff that I'm excited for people to see, because I think we have a lot of common areas in that. Same thing. We talked about therapy. We talked about self growth. We've talked about some of the struggles we've gone through in childhood as men now. And I think we've both connected on just sharing, and we've opened up quite a bit with each other on that. So I appreciate you opening up that door for us to get into that. So let's take it back, man. People know the broadcaster, the public personality. Who's Kyle when he's not in front of a microphone and when the lights are off?
Oh man, that's a good question because to your point, my nickname is Drapes. The great Tommy Heinsohn gave me that nickname back in Boston, 15, 20 years ago almost now. And so when people see me out in public, it's Drapes. Drapes, what's up? Drapes. And I'm at a point now where I want people to know who Kyle is. And so I'll keep it real with you, Mike. Kyle is a sensitive guy. Kyle is an emotional guy. Kyle is a vulnerable guy. Kyle is a guy that wants to make people happy, wants to see people smiling, wants to inspire people. And, you walk outside the house, these doors, and it's like, I got to turn it on. All right, I got to be Drapes. But when the lights are off, when the cameras stop rolling, I'm by myself. It's like, all right, who is Kyle really? And so, when I call games or I'm on TV, Mike, that's sort of my escape away from reality. But then when I walk into the car, close the door, I got to remember all the problems going on, all the issues that I'm facing. Reality hits. And so there's Drapes that people see in public, but Kyle, it's a different guy off camera.
Was there ever a point where you struggled with that transition and were either too much Kyle when you should have been Drapes, or did Drapes kind of take on its own persona at times? And I say that I have a friend that's a musician, singer, and when he puts those glasses on, man, and he gets on stage, it's an alter ego, and when he comes back, he's himself. And is that been ever a tough transition where you get caught up in that?
I think it's something I still struggle with, to be honest with you. And you mentioned therapy, and that's one of the things I talk to my therapist about right now is that no matter what, be Kyle, be authentic Kyle. Whether you're in the arena, you're on TV, which is all part of it. Now, I will say Drapes is part of who I am. That's it's not like it's 1 minute I'm Drapes, the next Kyle. I'm not the Incredible Hulk and Dr. Banner or anything, where I change into two different personalities. It's just that, for me and talking to my therapist, not letting whatever's happening around me impact who I am. You know what I mean? Like the kind of person that I am. And so that's the struggle that I'm working with now. That's the kind of thing I'm working on right now.
And what's made you get to that point? We talked about mental health, and it's become more open conversation, right? With especially I would say with men, I think more open. And as we age and get a little bit older here, what's your personal relationship with that? And what's that journey look like?
Well, I'm 51 years old. I've probably been in therapy, Mike, for about 30 years. So it's an ongoing struggle, and it got to a point where I'd say the last 5 or 6 years, a light bulb really came on in my mind because I was always the type to bury my feelings, hold things in, not be vulnerable. And I think I reached a point in my life and talking with my current therapist about it, doing it that way helped me get to this point. I've led a successful career, got 2 beautiful kids, but there came a point, Mike, where I got tired of hurting, man.
Yeah.
I got tired of hiding who I am. I got tired of being disappointed and tired of dealing with the struggles by myself. And I would say it all changed with COVID, man. Once COVID hit, it's like I started feeling everything. I became emotional when it came to everything. And I started really being more true to who I am, man. I just live day to day. Day to day. Started in therapy when I was in college. Had anger management issues growing up. I was an angry kid. Like I was a happy kid, but if you crossed me or disrespected me, I wanted to fight. And so growing up in college and my adult life, I had to control my anger. So I just kept everything inside. I was just like this. And I would use alcohol. Dude, there's so many different layers.
It's tough to think about, to be honest with you, Mike, because I would use alcohol as I suffered from social anxiety. In crowds, I couldn't deal. House parties, hanging with neighbors and friends, bars, I suffered from social anxiety. And so I would go to a bar and order 2 kamikaze shots as soon as I got in, just to, and I just wouldn't stop. I always had to have a drink in my hand. I just couldn't stop. But I thought that was normal. Working in Boston, going to Celtics games, after every game, me and the crew, we would head out. And I would drink, and I could never just have 1 or 2. It was always 4, 5, 6. And I used to have this saying, I wanted every night to be memorable. And so I was using alcohol to medicate the pain that I have.
Did you realize that?
No, not at all. No, not at all. Until I stopped drinking in 2017. I was in therapy at the time. My A1C levels were getting high, kind of borderline diabetic.
Okay.
I was on a terrible drinking run, partying run, where I was a functioning alcoholic. I would stay up till 2, 3, 4 in the morning, get home, take 3 or 4 Tylenol, and then go to work, and everybody thought it was fine. But I decided one day to just stop using alcohol. And my therapist was like, Kyle, don't think of it as you're never drinking again. Think of it as you're not drinking on this day. And so I became sober, and I remember I went to Ireland and did a meet and greet with Celtics fans in Ireland, and it was at a bar. So I get to the bar beforehand, and I asked the bartender, I'm like, what do people who don't drink when they come to a bar? Because I had no idea. I'm like, I was always Maker's Mark. I was hard taking shots.
Go for it.
He said, well, we have non-alcoholic beer, soda. I said, all right, let me try a non-alcoholic beer. I've never been a beer drinker. I'm like, I hate beer. But I said, give me the non-alcoholic beer. And it changed my life, because I had something that looked like alcohol, looked like a drink in my hand. So my social anxiety, people thinking, oh, is this guy weird? Well, how come he's, all that went away.
Yeah.
And then mocktails started to become popular. And so I just stopped. But the problem is, when you stop drinking, you lose friends. Your friends become drinking buddies, And people were like, Drapes, no way, you? Because I was the life of the party, dude. We're partying till sun comes up. Whatever it takes to have one of those nights.
Yeah.
And
you're on the road all the time?
On the road all the time, and once I stopped, it's like, damn, who are my true friends?
Yeah. Now, same thing. I'm child of divorce. Started probably going to therapy when I was about 6, for those reasons, right? And kind of off and on throughout my teen years, had some personal struggles, but I feel like I never really went for me. It was because I had to. It was for court, and there was a therapist that really hit home with me. His name was Rodney, and he was just different. Good guy, got through to me. We really clicked on that. Fast forward, I end up getting my degree in therapeutic recreation. I'm working at a group home, a children's home. I've been through divorce, unfortunately, 2 times. I've been through couples therapy. I've been through therapy, and recently, in the last probably couple of years, I've been back. I've always been open to it, but the reasons for me going as a 6-year-old Michael is different than going right now, currently at 52-year-old Mike, and the struggles change even within the last year and a half. It could be relationship, it could be heartbreak, it could be parenthood, all of those things. Has yours, since COVID, I guess, what has been the biggest shift, you would say, from going as a youngster till now? And are you still dealing with some of the same things that you started for, or have those been, I would say, dealt with, but you got a control of that, and now it's new things, whether it's career, whether it's teen children.
Well, I think for me, at the core of it, it's always been the same thing. When I first started going, it was to control anger management. And ultimately, what I've realized is anger management for me was always about how I responded to people. Somebody would do something, and it would be my response. Even at 51, I'm still dealing with how people do something, how they treat me, how they make me feel, and how do I respond. And so, even though it's not anger management right now, it has to do with, you know, me not letting the outside noise and people affect who I am and get me out of pocket. I think now, and I mentioned COVID, I think I've finally discovered who I am as a person, man. You know what I mean? Like I finally got in tune to like who I am, what I need, what I want, what's important to me, what's near and dear to my heart. Because growing up, I kept everything inside. I turned it to the bottle. I used alcohol as a way to cope with the hurt, the pain. And now, once you stop using alcohol 9+ years sober, it's like, damn, you start feeling everything. And sometimes it sucks, Mike. You know what I mean? Sometimes, the depression creeps in. I'm down. I'm sad. But I would rather have it this way because those are authentic feelings
Sure.
than masking it with alcohol like I used to.
Yeah. Well, first off, congratulations on the 9.5 years. That's a good accomplishment. Again, getting older and struggling and having the things that we've had to deal with, like you said, when that's your normal way of coping. I tip my hat to you on that. You mentioned also, you know what's important to you, and you know the person you are. What is important to you these days?
Relationships, man. Obviously, my relationships with my two kids, they mean the world to me. We have such a strong bond. We're best friends. I'm their hero. I'm their idol, and they keep me going. But also meaningful relationships with people. I was always the type. I had a lot of friends, but I didn't have a crew. Like it wasn't, I floated around a lot, so I knew a lot of people, but it was a lot of surface level talk, Mike,
Yeah.
talking about sports, talking about girls, that kind of thing. And so at this stage, over the last 5 years, I've discovered I like the one on one meaningful conversations like we're having right now.
Yeah.
I can still talk sports and women and things like that, but there are bigger things out there. I want to get to know people. And I've learned that the more I become vulnerable, the more people are vulnerable around me. And then you start developing those bonds.
Yeah, a lot deeper conversation, a lot meaningful. Like I said, even you and I, we met playing golf, like I said, in the rain, but there was something about that day and connecting. And I don't even know what we actually started talking about, but we got paired intentionally, I was told, because we were going to have fun. They wanted to build that relationship in the community. And little did they know we'd end up being friends, outside outside of that, and playing some golf and helping each other out. Um, you know, I keep trying to find a new way to say it, but I guess to push. When did you? When did it hit? I mean, I guess you might have said COVID, but really to push through and stop the drinking. I mean, so you had already stopped drinking 3 years before COVID. What made you realize, like, hey, I need to face this head on and do this? Was there an incident? Was it a buildup of just things? And if you're not
Uh,
comfortable sharing, that's okay.
I
But
mean, I can talk about it. There wasn't one incident; it was a series of incidents. I was, covering the Boston Celtics at the time, and we're on the West Coast trip. I think we played in Denver, Phoenix, the Clippers, and the Lakers. And I was literally a functioning alcoholic, Mike. I could stay out till 2, 3 in the morning, come home, pop a couple Tylenol, Advil, and be good to go the next morning. And there are a series of events during that road trip where I looked at myself and said, Kyle, is this really who you want to be? Is this really the kind of person you wanted to be? And at the time, I was in therapy, and I was talking to my therapist about it. My A1C levels for diabetes were getting a little bit high too. And we started talking about alcohol and me not drinking. And I was just like, what? Like, alcohol was such a big part of my life. I didn't really drink at home, but socially, I would, go hard. And so, but she told me, don't think of it as you're not drinking for the rest of your life. You're just not drinking on this day. And so one day turned into 2 weeks, turned into 2 months. And then it got to a point where it was like, I don't want to lose my streak. I want to keep this going. And so, 9+ years later, here we are. But I'll be honest with you, man. There are times where I still wish I could have a drink.
Yeah.
Just because of the stresses of life, the struggles. It's like, man, if I could just have one drink to take the edge off, take the chill off. But I don't, I've had dreams about it too, Mike, where I had a drink and then I had to tell the people in my life that I had a relapse.
Wow.
And I woke up sad, depressed, like, I don't believe because if I relapse for me, this is just for me, not anybody else, it's like the alcohol won.
Yeah.
I failed, and, I've never been a failure. So this is a battle that, I just keep going with, man.
Yeah. So what do you do when those times hit where you really want one? What's replaced the alcohol?
If anybody got any suggestions, let me know, man, because I really, because the thing about it, and I realized I wasn't addicted to alcohol. I was addicted to the high, the good times. You know what I mean? The partying with friends. Like, I can walk into a bar now, see bottles, and be totally fine. Like, it has no, and it really never had any impact.
Sure.
But for me, the drinking was to cure social anxiety, and so where I would walk into a bar and decide, I want tonight to be memorable. I want tonight to be one of the best nights of my life. And whatever it takes to get there, I'm going to do. If it takes 4 drinks, if it takes 4 shots, I'm going to do. And so nothing has really replaced that. I think and that's why I go back to the relationships. Having meaningful relationships provides a high to me. And that's something I'm still navigating and cultivating. That's what I'm still looking for.
And you and I touched on this a little bit the other day, but talk a little bit about the reactions from some of your friends or acquaintances that when you stop, how that affects them. We talked about this, and I told you my story on it, but let me hear that a little bit, because what you just described. If you read the comments from this episode of any of my friends or people that know me, I'm the same way, Kyle. I like to go have a good time, especially when I was in my 20s, early 30s of, I'm going to put on a show for my friends. And what can I do to make them laugh today? And never had a shirt on, always drinking, always having a good time, right? Just for the laugh. And there was a point in my life where I stopped for a little bit, and the reactions were very interesting of people judging. And so again, for that social anxiety, it created a whole different type of anxiety, right? And being around people. Let's talk about that for a minute, how people reacted when you did stop.
Well, it's interesting, man. And it sounds like we were the same way. I was the ringleader. When it came to partying, I was the chief CEO. I was the guy that arranged where we were going, how we were getting there, how late we were staying out, were we leaving from point A to point B? Like, they trusted me. And most of the times, Mike, your boy was spot on with his decision making, like, because we had some great times. But then I stopped, man. And first of all, nobody could believe it. They were like, you? What? And it was really hard at first because I realized so much of my relationships were more drinking buddies instead of real friends. And I remember the first, I'd say 6 months, 6 to 7 months, I stopped drinking that very early on. I went to a convention in Miami, I think it was, one in New Orleans, and then Ireland. I'm talking three major party spots. And my anxiety was at an all time level. I remember I'm in New Orleans hanging out, and I'm in a bar with a friend, and he's talking to these girls, and he's like, of course, I had to be hanging out with the one sober guy in New Orleans, and it kind of made me, I left after that, but it was like,
Wow.
damn, like people don't, now I'm the butt of jokes, you know what I mean? And so it was tough, man. It was hard at first, but, I've always been sort of a loner, like, my motto in middle school, shout out to Masterman in Philadelphia, was dare to be different. And so when everybody would go right, I would go left. And so I just stuck with it, man. And it's been tough, man. It's because you know how it is, Mike. Alcohol is such a big part of our lifestyle, not only just as friends and guys, but commercials on TV. You watching the football game. People, they show people in the bar having fun, laughing and everything. And those are the highs that I've missed with not drinking. But for me, I couldn't control the alcohol. The alcohol controlled me when I went out. And so it was one of the best decisions I've ever made.
That's amazing. It's tough because it's everywhere. I mean, I go visit my daughter who's in college, and what does she want to do? She wants to go out and she wants to party, right? Meet up with the guys if I haven't seen for a while. Hey, let's go get a drink. Let's golf. What do you want to drink? The cart person comes by. Hey, what do we have in here, right? And so, it's fine. But I think we're getting to that age, I hope, where people appreciate what you're doing. It's not the peer pressure, but I'm sure that you still get that. Uh, Going back, you were talking about meaningful relationships and whatnot. Who's your circle now? Do you have a mentor, somebody that you look up to that is just like your guy? Or and also in your career, you're traveling a lot, right? You might be moving out of the state to a different state and on the road again. How is that? What's the challenges of keeping meaningful relationships when you're on the road? So was the ESPN ever the dream?
Um, Not
'Cause
really.
back at that time, and you're back there, I would think like, oh, Stuart Scott and all
Right,
these people.
yeah,
like-
those guys were larger than life.
yeah.
But eventually I made it to Boston, and I realized I was in one of the top sports markets in the country, in the world.
Did you appreciate it at the time? Yeah.
Totally,
Okay.
totally. I mean, when I got the opportunity to go to Boston, my mom was like, "You're not going to Boston," because of its racial history and
Sure.
everything. But I'm like, Mom, the Red Sox are in, anytime you turn on ESPN Sports Center, Boston teams are in that first block. So I was ready for it, man. It was such a great sports town. I say this about Boston, when people go to sleep and wake up, the first thing they ask is, did the Sox win last night? Did the Celtics win? Like, that's the conversations they're having at the breakfast table.
Right.
And to be a part of that, I will say, I appreciated the job in Boston. I didn't appreciate the love that people had for me in Boston until I left. When I announced I was leaving and coming to Sacramento, neighbors, fans, people, they're like, "No, Drapes, no," and even to this day, I get several messages a week, "Come back to Boston, we need you back in Boston." And so I never realized the love they had for me there.
Would you go back?
Oh, in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Because it's a great sports city, man. Sports matters to them.
It's tough, man. That's probably one of my biggest challenges because I've lived in Wisconsin, I've lived in Washington State, Kentucky, Massachusetts, Sacramento. So I have friends all over. But when you're only there 3 years, 4 years, it's hard to develop that deep bond. Because when you think about it, life experiences, those are what create bonds. So let's say I'm working in Louisville, Kentucky in my 20s, for instance. That's one stage of my life. But those same friends I had in Louisville, they aren't with me when I get married. They aren't with me when I have children. They aren't with me when I go through divorce. And so it's like I leave a place and we're still friends. We still, check in, but it's not that deep connection. So I'll say moving around has really hurt my friendship circle. I have one friend from college that we're still tight, call him West Coast. But other than that, man, my circle is I don't have a circle. I got like one or two people I talk to every day, man, and that's about it, And so it's like I move a new place, develop relationships, and then I'll move on to somewhere else. Then I'll move on to somewhere else. So that hopscotching across the country has no doubt affected my interpersonal relationships.
Yeah, I mean, I could imagine. I've never lived across the country, but I've lived, between the Bay Area and here, and it happens even just there. And, fortunately, I'm only, 3 hours maybe away from a close friend. But, I have friends that have moved out of the way and we still keep in touch. But we had 20 years of those bonds. And so they might not be as close with my kids, or my kids might not be as close with them as we are, but we still have that and we still keep in touch. So, I could imagine the challenges, especially on the day to day. A phone call and being in person is quite a bit different. And, even this, when's the last time you FaceTime with a buddy, a guy friend of yours?
You're right. I can't remember it. To be honest
it doesn't happen. And you know what? I think it would be weird if one of my buddies just called me on the FaceTime just to chat on the FaceTime.
Chat, right?
I might start doing that. I'm gonna get some reactions from that. Hey, let's kind of shift it a little bit here. We talked about relationships and children and growing up. And as a dad, I know you went through some struggles. I've heard you talk a little bit. I don't know if you want to get into that in here, as far as just some abuse and things you've had to go through as a child. If you're not comfortable, we can skip that, because it was going to lead right into something else. But I can go straight.
No, that's part of my story, man. It's we can get into whatever, man. Let's do it.
Yeah, this platform, just to set that up for you, man, and the reason why I'm asking, and we're not talking basketball and the draft and all of that is, I've had my experiences growing up, and fast forward to maybe 6 months ago, and I've told the story on here before and through some of my social media platforms of why this show started. And a friend had reached out and couldn't ask me to talk, but he could ask me to go golf, right? And when we got out golfing, he opened up about everything, financials, marriage, all of that. And it really hit me that, people, when they hear a story, I'm hoping that this platform creates a spot to where when they hear something, it resonates with them, it helps them. Talking about being sober for 9.5 years, Carol Lee, who we both know, shared her story about loss with family and her father and marriage, had it's that, David Garibaldi, we're talking about different things than what is the people on the stage or what's the surface level stuff. And I've gotten a lot of responses, comments, phone calls from stories that have shared that they've helped. And I've only been doing this a couple months. My goal for this show is to open up as much as we're comfortable with. This isn't a push it thing. And again, but I think your story is pretty amazing. And if I can provide an outlet to one more person hear a story that might be going through something, that has gone through something, and can help them. I think, that's the reason for this. So, I bring that up again because I've heard parts of it. You and I haven't dug deep into it, but kind of wanted to do that because I wanted to lead into how that makes you the father and parent and friend you are today. So,
For me, man, I'll go back to the childhood. It was there were some good things. Mom and dad in the house, brother and sister. I was the middle child. Always had parties at the house. Like my parents would always have people over. Music always playing. You know. But alcohol was a big part of that household, and it got violent sometimes, and I think as a 51-year-old, and in therapy, my therapist always tries to trace everything back to that little boy who grew up in Philadelphia on Walnut Lane. And I think for me, fear was a big part of my childhood. And even to this day, Mike, fear is not necessarily I'm afraid of somebody, but I'm afraid of loss. I'm fearful of losing relationships and people. And so, yeah, there was some abuse, in the house, for sure. I love my parents to death, but, the word love was rarely mentioned, growing up. There were rarely I love yous, at least that I can recall. And so when you talk about being a dad now, one of the things I'm most proud of is my 16-year-old son, Nick. He's always saying, I love you, Dad. He'll be like, Dad, I'm going to go get a shower. I'm like, all right, I love you, Dad. Like those kind of things. Like it's a complete 180 from when I was growing up. And, same thing with my 14-year-old daughter. It's like, and I tell her, I told my daughter, I said, as you go on through life and you look for a partner, a husband or whatever, they may say they love you, but you got to feel it. And I looked at her, I said, can you feel how much I love you? And she says, yes, Dad, I can feel it. And so that kind of strong relationship, with my kids is a lot different than what I had growing up. And I think, alcohol, like I said, was a big part of it growing up. The physical abuse was a big part of it. In my life, there's been sexual abuse also. It's been a lot, man. It's been a lot. And so I think for me, at 51, I'm still like a little child almost. You know what I mean? Where I want to be cared for. I want to be nurtured. I want to hear the I love yous. I want the hugs because I don't feel like I got a lot of it growing up, And so that's the weight of my heart, man, is, they talk about love languages and everything like that, Shower me with love, man. You got me. You got me.
Yeah. It sounds similar. My therapist also will talk about something. She goes, I know you, because I'll say, hey, I got it. I'm good. I'm good on this. And she goes, I know you're good. What about little boy Mike? How good is Mike? And you know what's funny is she says it, and I can feel it literally like there's little boy Mike inside here. You bring up your kids, and I know you've got such a love for your kids. You gush about them, and I know you get to spend a lot of time and quality time and doing all the things that dads do. How do you balance that, protecting them from the things you've gone through, and even around the alcohol? They're getting to those teenage years, and parties start coming up, and college is around the corner. What's kind of how do you go about that?
Well, that's one of the things I'm worried about, man, because it's they've been so protected that when they get out there in college, what if they do want to go to the party and try drinking? Will they become addicted? I will say, my son Nick, who's going into his senior year, I'll tell this story. you know, he's such a rule follower, man, and I love that about him. But one of my proudest moments was he was hanging out with some friends. They went to a haunted house, had a good time, and then they went to this hangout spot. I'll just say a restaurant to hang out. And usually this hangout spot restaurant, after that, people go party somewhere else, you know? And he called me from the restaurant and said, "Hey, Dad, can you come pick me up? I don't feel comfortable here." So even just that step, you know, knowing that he can call mom or dad and we'll be there for him. He had the wherewithal to say, "You know what? This situation, I don't quite feel good about it." I'll tell you another story. You know, it was a high school dance, and they were gathered at a friend's house, and the parents left for a minute, and the friends, they sneak upstairs, and they're drinking and smoking, and he's feeling uncomfortable. He calls us up, "Hey, I don't like this vibe. Can you come pick me up?" You know? And so those are the things, like, it makes me say, okay, he can handle certain situations. Because I'll tell you, I never drank in high school. My first drink was high school graduation. I think it was beer. It was a 40 of Old English and like a six pack. That's how far back I
Snoop Dogg.
Yeah, exactly, man. We had some St. Ides going and everything, man. But that was my first night. And then I got to college, and your boy went buck wild when I went to college, you know? And so, like, I was never into it, you know, around friends or anything like that. But, you know, I went to college, and I just went ham, man. And, you know, that's one of my fears for the kids. It's like, all right, you got mom and dad now, but when you're 400 miles away or whatever on the college campus, can you make those same decisions?
Right.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know you got 2 kids, and your son golfs. How did he get in that? Did you take him out when he was a kid?
Yeah. He's been golfing. So he's 16. He's been golfing for about 10 years.
Okay.
And he's had lessons. I've really invested, you know, good clubs and everything.
Yeah.
And he loves it, man. He's on the high school team, and, you know, he can hit it farther than me, but he doesn't, and I'm sure he'll watch this.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the touch like I do, you know what I mean? I have the touch.
Speaking of your kids, what values are you hoping that they take from you, watching you live your life? And, you know, I don't know how much in the know they are of all of it. You know, it's funny when they start getting this age, I would told my girls, I'll never lie to you, but if you're not age appropriate for something, I'm going to give you the version that is right for your age, right? Is as far of what they know of dad now. I mean, you know, they don't know all probably the wild stories on the road or from college, which they don't need to, but maybe accept that there was some. But, you know, what are you hoping they take from what they know of how you live your life and what they see of you today? And, you know, there's a dad, there's Kyle, and there's Drapes. You know,
You know, what's interesting about kids, Mike, my son Nick knows a lot about my past. I did this leadership conference out here in Folsom, and I spoke to a bunch of high school kids, and he was part of it. And I got really raw and honest with them. And, you know, he was cool with it and everything like that. But the thing about kids, you not only teach them by telling them, you teach them by doing, by being an example, how you live your life. And I think for me, what they're going to take away is dad treats everybody with respect. He gets along pretty much with everybody. He's a hard worker. He has a big heart, you know. And so I think for them, it's not so much me telling them, no, you got to do this, you got to do that. It's them seeing how I carry myself every day. Them seeing how I react to, you know, heartbreak, struggles, losing a job, you know, like they're learning even if I'm not talking to them. They're watching, man. They're sponges. They absorb everything. And so, for instance, let's say I lose my job and I turn to the bottle. I start drinking. They're seeing that, Mike. They're seeing that, man. And so they're watching me, how I react through these difficult times. And so I hope what they take away from it is, dad is loving, caring, treats people with respect. And I think they have that. Like when I watch them in the world, very respectful, very happy kids. And so, I feel like, knock on wood, I'm doing a pretty damn good job, man.
I would say you are as well. You said, you talked about, losing a job and whatnot, and a lot of people's perspective of your identity is you're the face, you're on TV. What if the next job is a little different sidetrack from the career that you've had already? How do you identify as that with that right now?
That's a great question, man, because I'm trying to figure that out. I believe being in the public eye, being on TV for nearly 30 years has had a major impact on who I am. I'm actually an introvert.
Yeah, you told me that.
I'm not out a lot. I'm pretty much here at home most of the time. I'm by myself because when I walk outside, it's like I feel like I got to be on all the time. There goes Drapes versus Kyle. I feel like people identify me, like you said, from my career, and there have been times throughout that I wish I wasn't on TV. I wish I could just blend in and be out. It's funny, Mike. I'll tell you a quick story, man. I went out of town recently, and just being away from where I live made me feel so much freer.
Yeah.
I was more outgoing, talking to people. I could just be myself without fear of who's watching, who's looking. And I'll tell you a quick story. There was one time in Boston, I'm out with some friends at a bar, and I'm talking to this girl. We're just chatting. And my buddy notices this guy like filming me while I'm talking to this girl. Now I'm married at the time. And so my buddy's like, dude, what the hell are you doing? And goes, confronts this guy. But when I go out, I'm always aware of who's, looking, who's saying and so it's almost, I don't want to say a paranoia, but, I can't be present. I can't just enjoy the moment because I'm always wondering, all right, does that person know who I am? What are they thinking about this? And so, if I do change careers and I'm not in the public eye, would it be kind of freeing, liberating for me, which would be a great thing.
Yeah. What is good about your career and your personality? You've recently done it for me, and I've seen you in the last 2 weeks do a few more. But your motivational speaking, your emceeing, your auctioneering now, which is kind of a new a new take, which you're really good at it, and I think it's glad that people have seen that. What does it mean now to you've built a platform, and again, I don't think it's because it's Drapes or that. I think it is, to me, you're the same. I understand what you mean when you say that. I have a friend that's Craig and Greg, all at the same time, depending on what his golf score is. Giving back, like I said, take this all the way back to where we do before we kind of wrap this up. We met at a charity event. I see you all over at charity events because you are you, right? You have a big voice. You have a big heart. People are drawn to you. I think it all works for obvious reasons, and I hope you see that in yourself. What is giving back now to the groups that you work with, whether it's speaking at a leadership forum, whether it's for children disadvantaged, or just charity in general, or schools? What does that mean? What does that mean for you? What do you hope that people take from that when they hear your words?
Man, it means everything because that's what I'm really about. And I've told people this when I talk to groups. I don't want my legacy to be play-by-play announcer, TV Kyle. I want people to say, damn, he impacted lives. He inspired me. And so when I talk to groups, I'm a living, breathing, walking example that you can go through stuff, shit. You can be at the bottom and you can still make it out, you know? I, my platform is called The Resilient Path. And when I talk to people, I list all the things. I go through all the things that have happened, you know, in my life: the physical abuse, the sexual abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse. You know, I haven't talked much about it, but losing two siblings because of drugs, you know, my brother, who, you know, it was my older brother, he got addicted to drugs, and his heart gave out, and he passed away at the age of 38. My sister died of a drug overdose at 40. And so I always say, why am I the one that got to this point? Why am I the one? And it's because I've been resilient. I've been knocked down several times, Mike, down and out, and I just keep going on. And so when you ask me, what do I want people to take away from it? That's what I want. Because, and I told my nephew this, people don't care about your story, Mike, unless you make it. How many times have we seen people from the neighborhood, the block, got so much potential, but they never realize it because they're in the streets? The ones who get the books made, the stories made, the movies made are the ones who actually make it. And so what I share with people is, yes, you're going through hard times. Shit's tough right now. But you got to keep going. You got to be resilient. And so that's what I want people. If I can do it, trust me, and we're just scratching the surface on some things. If I can do it, anybody can do it, man.
I appreciate you sharing that and talking about your platform. You're going to have a podcast and a show coming out pretty soon about that. I know you got the basketball one. I know you're out there with Bibby and Eddie and Ty on Straight Game, but you also have one that's talking about this stuff we're talking about now, about, you know, struggles and life and depression. Do you want to talk about that before we wrap this up here?
Yeah, it's the Resilient Path podcast, should be coming out here soon. And the reason why I started it is because when I go speak to certain groups or when I post something, the amount of people that said, oh man, Kyle, I'm going through the same thing. Case in point, I was speaking at a leadership conference back in March. I talked about drugs, physical abuse, sexual abuse. And this teenage girl, 16, came up to me afterwards and said, Kyle, thank you so much for sharing your story. And she said, my dad is abusing me right now, and my sister is addicted to drugs. And this is a 16-year-old girl we're talking about. This is a girl who has her whole life. And she said, thank you for telling your story because you're inspiring me. And so if I could do that, that's what it's about for me, man. And so that's what my podcast is going to be about. My first episode is going to be about, I'm 51 years old. I'm going through a divorce, and I just lost my 6-figure job. What do I do now? And so it's another opportunity, Mike, to show resiliency.
Yeah.
We all face it, whether it's in high school, middle school, college, in your relationships. Stuff happens that knocks you down. It's how you get back up and respond. And so that's what the podcast is about.
I think that's great, and I can't wait to tune in and help share that and spread that word. I mean, you, like I said, you have such a story. You're good at sharing that story between the vulnerability and just your ability to be a storyteller, but you speak from here. And I think that's what's going to resonate with anybody. I mean, when these cameras are off, that's still what resonates with me about you, man. You're fun. You tell a good story. We have good conversations. And I love that, you know, each time we just kind of get to learn more and more about each other. So I'm very grateful for you coming on here. I think some of the time you need to spend now is on the driving range with your irons, because everything else all right. But these last 2 days have been a little rough. I've seen
It's
from
been bad,
you.
man. It's been bad. When people see the video, man, I got the yips with the irons, bro. It is what it is, man. It comes and goes. Comes and goes.
So hey, the last 2 questions I always ask Kyle here before we wrap this up. One is for fun and one is a little reflective. And you know what? Sometimes they go the opposite way of what I think they're going to be. But the first one is, if you had a mulligan in life, and for those that don't know what a mulligan is, it's a do-over in golf. You get to re-tee a shot. If you had a mulligan in life, what would you do over?
Wow. If I had a mulligan in life, that's a tough one, man, because, and it's kind of a cliche, but everything happens for a reason, you know? I wouldn't be here today if 30 years ago this didn't happen, X didn't happen. I would say, you know, for me, it's not necessarily a mulligan, but if I knew how important communication was, I would value it at an earlier age. It's just now at 47, 48, 49, 50, how it became apparent how important communication is. Sure. And a lot of my struggles going through divorce, my relationships would be stronger if I communicated better. And so if I could do it over again, I'd learn the value of communication.
Thank you. I like that. And isn't that kind of ironic coming from a communications major?
Right? It's crazy, man. All I do is communicate for my job. But
I love to talk. I love to talk. And I realized the same thing. I just read this book, Jefferson, something about the powers of communication and whatnot. So it's kind of ironic how those 2 things line up. And the last question here, Kyle, is if you had past or present, alive or dead, fictional, non-fictional, who would be in your dream golf foursome?
Ooh, that's a good question. I got to go with Muhammad Ali. You know, the Louisville Lip. I got to go with him just to pick his brain about everything he's gone through, you know, civil rights era, you know, Vietnam War not going, you know, the draft and everything. So it'd be Muhammad Ali. I'd also go Martin Luther King Jr. His nonviolent, you know. Remember, I had anger management issues growing up. Like, how'd he, you know, live the nonviolent lifestyle? And the last one, Tiger Woods. Yeah. I need help with the irons, Mike. I need help. No, but seriously, Tiger is the reason why I golf, man. And, you know, to pick his brain, not only about golf, but dude, what are you thinking behind the wheel? Like, just, you talk about resilient. This is a guy that's been at the highest of highs and some of the lowest of lows. How does he keep coming back? Picking his brain. So that would be my foursome, including me, of course.
Yeah, that's a solid foursome right there. Well, on that note, man, like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed playing with you the other day. I've loved getting to know you this last year. I'm super appreciative of your encouragement of me and what I got going on over here, your support in other ventures that we're working on. And I think, you know, they come from a same place of growth, past, you know, struggles and the examples we want to leave and legacy we want to leave for our kids and the people that we touch. And so I'm excited for people to see this, and I'm excited for everything that's coming your way, man. You deserve the best. And, you know, I always say things happen for a reason, man. And I think you're somebody that deserves the world, not to be given to them just because you've put in the work and, you know, the growth that I can't wait to see what that is. And I hope that I'm in an opportunity and a space to follow along and be here, not thousands of miles away. But I'm hoping selfishly you stay in this region and are able to do whatever you do next from here. So I can't wait to get out, play some more golf now.
Get out again.
And now that the sun is out, and I'm looking forward to everything in the future here, Kyle. So I appreciate that on more levels than you know, man. So thank you for everything.
Thank you, my man. Appreciate it, man. And next time we play, my irons will be on point. I ain't worried about that. And you're doing great work here, Mike. So thanks for having me on.
I appreciate it, everybody. Till next time, between shots. Thank you.